All right, so welcome everyone to today's session where we're taking a deep dive into the AML CTF laws and their impact on ordering SMSF documents. My name is Dunn from Smarter SMSF, and naturally this has been probably the bane of our existence, but the key area of focus quite clearly since probably late May, early June, and continues to be, given the sheer volume of work that needs to be done in this space. And I think it's probably fair to say the large majority of those impacted by these laws have been somewhat surprised at the volume of work and activity that needs to be done, and to be ready for that. So really what I'm going to be outlining for you today is to get an appreciation of what the process looks like in this new AML Tranche 2 world. Because as we'll see from today's session, there are a number of documents that will be impacted by these changes to the law, and the fact that we at Smarter SMSF are a designated service provider under AUSTRAC, needed to be registered. Like many of you will have to have gone through that process yourself, and then develop your own AML CTF programs and risk assessments and all that fabulous stuff that we've had to enjoy over the last few months to get ready, since, of course, AUSTRAC released a number of those guidance pieces or kits for us to work through in about March or April this year. So what we're going to be doing today is to really be outlining what the impact of these laws look like in respect to the ordering of documents, what documents are included in there, and so forth. And then really, when it comes to the service providers like Smarter SMSF, where we have our own AML CTF programs and our own obligations that we need to uphold, there does become this really important decision. You go down ultimately one of two pathways, and we're going to be explaining that around either the obligations that we have to conduct customer due diligence, or CDD, or whether ultimately you move into a Reliance agreement with us that will allow you to streamline and fast track that ordering process. Now, what that will allow us to do is to rely upon the work that you have done under your own AML CTF program, so that we don't need to, in essence, duplicate that AML process that would ordinarily need to occur under our own obligations. So I'm going to work through that in a bit of detail today, because by and large, we're going to see a large number of our document subscribers, our members, look to put in place a Reliance agreement. And I'll go through that Reliance dashboard and how that application will be. But it's not simply limited to those that actually have a document subscription with us. For those that are ordering documents ordinarily, you may want to contemplate whether that Reliance agreement would be relevant to you based upon those particular designated services, or whether there is, in essence, an obligation where we would need to go through that full customer due diligence process. Now, there will be in the future an opportunity to look at kind of single document reliance. I'm not going to get into that today. That might be relevant in the context of PAYG orders in the future. It is something that we may look to explore, but again, there's a number of additional steps to that, and we would need to naturally price that in as to what that would look like. So I'm not going to focus on that today, but there is, in essence, a third limb to this that would allow for single order reliance that could also be relevant and to apply. So like I said, we'll then move into what these two different approaches ultimately look like. In the first instance, we'll spend time explaining that Reliance membership. It's not a membership that needs to be paid for. We just call it membership because it aligns to, I guess, the membership that we have, the subscriptions that we have with many of our document users. And then after we've gone through that process, we're going to look at some of our new forms and explain to you what those key differences are around the fact of as whether due diligence needs to occur on our side of the fence as part of that designated service order, or whether there's reliance in place and therefore what that fast tracking would look like as part of that completion. And then we'll wrap up with some decisions that you might need to be making yourself about this and some of the frequently asked questions that we've had so far as well. So let's get stuck into this. So as I've already mentioned, we at Smarter SMSF here needed to be registered with AUSTRAC. And the fact that that registration occurs is because there are a number of designated services that are relevant to us under the AML CTF laws. Most predominantly, it does sit within the trust and company formation services. So here we're looking at, our new SMSFs, our companies and corporations, and I'll talk about all those shortly. But it also expands into instructions where there are changes, in essence, to trustees and so forth. So the change of details, and this is something that I think will probably not surprise people as such, but just understand the importance of changes of trustees due to incapacity, due to death of a member and so forth. We are going to have to look at our customer due diligence obligations where we have that director appointed, or even where there is a change in the ownership of the shares in that corporate trustee, again, which fall off the back of incapacity or death of a member. So I'm not sure how many of you have sort of spent a lot of time sort of understanding this in your own practices and so forth, but quite clearly AUSTRAC expects this to impact over 100,000 businesses ultimately with these tranche 2 reforms that naturally include a number of these professional services firms. But if you haven't sort of had a look at this in any great detail yet, I'd suggest that you do. And then there are a number of resources out there. The IPA technical resource is a fantastic one for accounting firms generally. Now, when we look at under our own AML CTF program and those that would be captured as a designated service here, there are about 8 or 9 documents that currently sit within our platform that will need to have a requirement for CDD obligations to be undertaken. So things, as we said before, around trust formation and company formations are certainly captured in there. So we naturally at Smarter SMSF have a sizable number of corporate trustees along with fund establishments. So in that regard, they are captured, as you can see in here, under item 6. The same with our other related trust arrangements, so bare trusts, fixed unit trusts, and so forth. And then that final one, as I said before, is where we see those variations to changes of trustee, whether it may be individual to corporate or where another individual is being appointed, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be obligations around that, as there would be if you're making changes naturally to directors and shareholders within entities in their own right. But if you are ordering documents like pension commencements, whether it's account-based, transition to retirement, there's preparation of binding death benefit nominations, non-binding SMSF wills and those sort of things. They are ultimately, from our understanding, out of scope. Things like investment strategy reports, deed variations, again, don't fit into that trust and company formation designation. So from that point of view, a lot of those are excluded from that approach. So if you are, and this is where we see changes to our initial registration process, if you are only ordering those pension compliance-based documents on our platform, which we do have a number of members that do that, then you will see no change to, in essence, what you're currently doing. It's only where we go back to these designated services, have we had to make changes to the forms that will then ultimately impact the delivery of that document, either immediately, subject to whether Reliance is in place, or potentially require the parties to that order, i.e. the directors or the members or the shareholders, for them to actually have to go through and undertake a verification process for our own AML CTF program. So again, I've had a number of questions as we've gone along here where people are saying, well, if you do this, does it actually tick the boxes for my firm as well? The short answer is no. So the reality is these are what we are doing for verification purposes satisfies our own obligations. Okay, so the fact that we are requesting this doesn't mean that it satisfies your own requirements under your own AML CTF program. Okay, so again, we've had a number of those sort of questions come along. We have an obligation to ourselves, and then what we have to make the decision on in certain circumstances, if you look at the right-hand side here, is if you, as your firm, has its own AUSTRAC registered AML CTF program, well, we need to make a decision whether we can rely upon the work that you are conducting to, in essence, allow for that order to go through. Now, that's not a simple, yes, you have it, job is done. We need to go through with the individuals and through a KYC check with those individuals, and then also a KYB check in respect to the trust or the company, whatever operates there in respect to that entity that has their own AML CTF program. So this is really the decision tree that you need to be thinking through at this point in time. So if we are ordering documents via the Smarter SMSF platform here, are we ordering documents that would come under the designated services, in particular that focus, as I said before, of trust and company formations? If we are, do we have our own requirements under our own AML CTF program? So therefore, we have to go through our own verifications with clients, and are we going to be able to provide and, in essence, have Smarter SMSF rely on that information, or do we have to, in essence, provide or ensure that the client goes through and, in essence, completes that process again for Smarter SMSF? Okay, so what we have inside our platform now for this Reliance agreement is a 3-step process to, in essence, get you to sign up for this Reliance membership. And you'll see here at the bottom of these slides, and you'll get a copy after today's session, is that we have built on our website under our platform here, our knowledge base. So for those of you that don't know where this lies, under our app switcher, we've got knowledge base that you can see there, and that will take you over to the knowledge base. This is where you can see sample documents, user guides, all this sort of stuff. And we have an AML CTF section that you can see in here. And there's a number of these steps that we're going to go through now, for example, about the completion of that Reliance membership application form and what the process looks like when someone has to go through that full CDD obligation, for example, via the platform when they, say, have a trust formation, such as a new SMSF or a company incorporation. So this is really where we want to be sending you to understand what a lot of that process actually looks like. So let's head back to the slides, because I'm going to now walk you through what this sort of Reliance program looks like. Now, what I do have on here are a number of screens. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through every screen, but where we are ultimately going to get to at the end of this is, in essence, the Reliance membership, the completed application that you can see on here. So this is one I've prepared earlier. And what you can see here is we have a Reliance dashboard that sits within our admin console. So again, to get to here, we have our app switcher and our admin console that single signs you in across different parts of the Smarter SMSF platform. So you can go from here in documents to educate, to our Learn platform, to support, to admin console, to our knowledge base, seamlessly through that single sign-on approach. So what I'm showing you on these slides is, in essence, the front end of this completed application that you can see on here. So I'm going to go back to the slides and quickly just walk you through what that actually looks like. So you can see here, the first thing once you click on that Reliance dashboard is that it will look at and ask you whether you are already an active document subscriber or you're a PAYG user. So access to this area is typically linked to the account holder or parent users that sit under the subscription. But this is going to need someone with authority within that organization to be able to start that application process for Reliance here. And you can see in here some of the differences and ultimately what will happen here. So we're capturing or covering the cost of the KYC and KYB checks with our active document subscribers. There will be a fee. That fee will in essence be passed on to those PAYG users who want to put a Reliance agreement in place. So we then in essence have 5 or 6 stages that you can see here that we need to go through. So this is capturing all the detail of the entity that is enrolling, in this instance, Sample Financial Planning Proprietary Limited. We've got their AUSTRAC number, we've got the addresses, we've got who the compliance notices are to be sent to, if there's enhanced CDD and other requirements as part of that process. We have information about the compliance officer, so we know where that is to be sent to. We also have a number of confirmations that need to be ticked off to ensure that the entity that is applying has a program in place, that they're complying with those obligations. They have staff training that and the staff understand their obligations under the AML CTF laws and where it's being provided by Smarter SMSF. Recognise that we engage a third party to actually undertake that. We use a group called Verify Me, and I'll talk to that a little bit more shortly. And that there are adequate policies and procedures and systems in place to, in essence, ensure that the records and so forth can be obtained if there are events of loss, system failure, or disaster. So again, as we sort of work through this, you will then also see here we ask about how you are tracking your own client records. So are you using it through a practice management system? Are you using a cloud-based platform maybe to track that information? Or are you using a third-party verification provider? You might be using BGL's Verify. You might be using an Easy AML. You might be using Verify Me like we have at Smarter SMSF. But understanding what the approach is that you are utilizing for that record keeping purpose and the verification. Now from there, once we've understood what that compliance looks like, it is now all about capturing the information that we need for directors and shareholders with at least 25% ownership of the business so that we can conduct our own KYC and KYB checks before we would allow for that Reliance agreement to be issued, reviewed, and then ultimately signed by all parties. So it's pretty self-explanatory that you can see as we work through here. Again, it's about obtaining the information of the parties that would need to have those checks in place. So we're simply, adding individuals here as directors or adding those with 25% ownership, as we've stated on the screen here. And then again, we have this consent at the bottom here to ensure that we're authorising the fact that Smarter SMSF will undertake those verifications for the relevant parties that are involved. And then once that has been completed, you'll ultimately review and then submit that application. And that application ultimately gets submitted to us for review. So that is where we come back to the screen that I was showing you before, and it would in essence highlight the fact that that first application has been submitted. Now, the next step to this is then, of course, the verification that needs to happen of the relevant parties and then the business that those parties are associated with. Now, the key thing here is in this instance, you can see that the status of John and Jane here have been verified, i.e. they have gone through the process of completing the KYC check through Verify Me. Now, when you complete that application and we have reviewed that and then in essence authorize that next step, What you will see that is different to that step here is that this second step will include a section here. Rather than being verified, it shows pending and then allows for that user to click invite, and that invite will open up the ability for them to grab the invitation link, and that invitation link will enable them to go and undertake that KYC check. And I should note that the KYC check is first, because what that does is it creates a wallet for that individual. And that wallet, in essence, allows them to utilize that on an ongoing basis. And the validity of that wallet is for up to 12 months. Once the individuals have been added in there, then there is an opportunity to add the entity and link the entity to those individuals for the purposes of undertaking the KYB requirements. So you can simply copy and paste that link into a web browser. Equally, if you're using your mobile phone, you can take an image or open up your camera, scan the QR code there, and again, do the same process through the phone. Now, what you're going to see, as you can see on the screen here, is that it requires then verification. So this has been customized naturally to Smarter SMSF. You can see the branding on here, and it will require that individual to go through and set up their wallet within the Verify Me platform there. Now, I'm going to go through and explain a little bit more of that when we utilize an order that requires individuals to go and do that. But you can see this approach is consistent, whether it's the individuals looking for a Reliance agreement to be in place, or ultimately when those orders are happening and the full customer due diligence needs to be completed on the Smarter SMSF platform. And throughout here, we've got a number of links that take you through this approach. So again, we get back to this position whereby John and Jane have now been verified, and it will allow us to move into that next step that we can see here. So on the assumption that John and Jane have been done, and then also sample financial planning has been done, it will allow us to now look at getting this Reliance agreement completed between us and the firm that is requesting for that Reliance. Now, again, this is all being sort of manually checked through the back end of our system. And we are, as a workflow, in essence, ticking some of these sections off based upon, step one being done, and then the KYC, step two having been done. Once those statuses have been updated to being verified, and then we move into, in essence, this final screen, which is all about the Reliance agreement being in place. Now, what we have that you can see on the screen here, just before I do jump to that, is this concept of risk assessment at low, medium, or high. Okay, so if something comes back as low or medium risk, ultimately nothing to see here, and we move on. And this is also the case in respect to orders. So when an order goes through, it's on hold until the relevant parties have completed their verification. Once that verification has been completed, if the identity checks have come back, or the verification checks have come back with low or medium risk, then the system will automatically update and then release those documents as being completed. If it is high risk, then we need to undertake enhanced CDD, and there will be further assessment that we will need to do, might require some further information. So that is relevant again, whether we're going through it for Reliance purposes or we're going through it for the actual order itself. So just again, an important note there on that particular process. And then we get into this Reliance agreement. So it will show that it's ready to be sent for signing. And then what we will do on our end is we will automatically generate it like we generate all of our other documents. We will create that CDD Reliance agreement that you can see here on the right-hand side, and we will send it to be electronically signed by the relevant parties. So if I go back to our Reliance screen, once that has actually been completed, we will then attach it to this area so that you can see that it is all completed. So in this instance here, we'll click on it. We use Box internally within our business, and we use Box Sign, which is fully native to that platform. So what you can then see here is that it will open up, in essence, that completed order that is on the screen, if that wants to come up. Here we go. And it will allow you to naturally review that document and then sign that document by all the relevant parties. So again, you have the opportunity to go through and review all the relevant information in here. And then once that process has been done, and again, it's been signed by those involved in this process that need to sign it, we talk about the designated services and the register and so forth. Once that's all signed off, then we move into, in essence, our final step. And that final step is to, in essence, activate that membership. Okay, so the membership being activated is really just conditionally setting up on the profile of the users of that platform. So if you have a team, and you might have a team of 5 or 6 staff that are utilizing that Smarter SMSF subscription, we will apply tags to those team members so that they can now undertake the ordering process with recognition that the Reliance agreement is in place. Okay, so that's a really important step. So not every staff member needs to go through and complete the KYC, KYB. It's only the directors, and it's only those that have shareholdings or holdings of greater than 25%. All other team members, in essence, we will tag them as being eligible under that subscription or under that arrangement to be able to undertake orders that are a designated service conditionally that would enable them to go through and complete that without any further verifications. I'm going to go through again a couple of other things here. So it does conditionally alter that process, but there are some disclosures that need to be talked about. And only a discussion we had last week with one of our members did we recognize some additional permissions that we're adding into the system at the moment that will deal with the fact that they, in their own AML CTF program, they want to control how those orders are done and checking that AML CTF requirement internally has been done for their own obligations too. So when we have people that sign up, I should also note now we have a complete revamp of our onboarding. So whether it's something that's new as a subscriber or for PAYG as well, what we do have on our Smarter SMSF platform now is a complete, as I said, revision of what that process looks like. So I'm not going to go through that process in its entirety, but you can see here from the PAYG sign-up process, we now have the ability here to create that free account, but there's a completely different onboarding process. And what this requires you to do now, I might just get to the next page, is that it asks you whether your ordering documents or education. If it's only education, of course, you'll get your access straight away. But if it is documents, then we want to know what sort of documents are you ordering, because again, there may be the opportunity at that point in time to put in place a Reliance agreement. But if you're not ordering those documents, you would go general, and then again, it would fast track that registration through. So we've spent a fair bit of time, again, trying to unpack this to ensure that the right people end up in the right spots and don't overdo what may be required for what they need to order or why they might be accessing the platform. So again, just some additional steps that we have built into the platform around those that are being onboarded for the first time. So now let's move to the ordering process and the key change. So hopefully that has helped to explain what the obligations are for you and some of those key decisions that need to be made initially, subject to the volume of orders and the type of orders that you would be doing around the platform. Now, from the ordering process, off the back of the fact that, again, if we come back to this pathway, if you have a Reliance membership in place, then we have the relevant tags on you. And once we have gone through that verification around those individuals, we have a client experience that virtually looks identical to what was in place by law before 1st of July 2026. Okay, so that client experience is such that, yes, you need to disclose that you have undertaken some customer due diligence around it in accordance with your own program, and you'll declare that, but otherwise that experience looks identical to what it was historically. For those that don't have Reliance in place with us, then we have our own obligations, as I said before, to undertake our own customer due diligence, which therefore means each order that is a designated service, we need to go through a verification for KYC of those relevant parties to that approach. Okay, so with Reliance, what you can see here on this screen is that we have conditionally showing this additional question now. And that additional question highlights whether you have undertaken the full KYC check for all those trustees and directors. Okay, so I'm going to go to this form to show you what this looks like. Okay, so we have our new SMSF here. And one of the things that you can see on the screen that we have added into this approach is we're starting to build these sidebars. So these sidebars are really there to help you to identify, in this instance, we're looking at the AML CTF requirements as a designated service, and to help you understand what different things you might not understand in order to complete this document. Okay, so we've got the pathways here. If it's a pathway B, they're going to get a Smarter SMSF branded Verify Me email. It's not phishing. We never see the results, etc., etc. We've got links to parts to our website. We've got our user guide on what each of these questions mean. We've got our change log around our new deed. We've got the help guides that we've got around the AML CTF laws that I spoke about before. And then we've got a number of these FAQs that you can see in here, again, to help understand what that process looks like. Okay, so in terms of cost, to go through that process, etc., etc. But the key things here to note is that this section here that I've highlighted will only display for those that have a Reliance membership in place, okay? Because we have gone through a due diligence process with you, and we are satisfied under that agreement that you will be conducting the KYC obligations for those clients that are a party to this application, okay? And this is the same whether it's for a company order, whether it's for a new SMSF order, any of those. Now, I should note over here, we can minimize these. So if you do want to see full screen, you can do so. Again, they are relevant to both of those. Okay, so the important thing here is that if you have completed under Reliance, then each of these will require you to, in essence, tick off this declaration that we have, in accordance with our obligations under the Reliance agreement, have ensured that we have undertaken the relevant KYC checks, and we've applied, and in essence, we're preparing this order on the basis that this has been done, and we at Smarter SMSF can rely upon that. So we timestamp this information into the order so that we know what information has and hasn't been done accordingly for our own AML CTF purposes. Okay, so now there may be the odd occasion, and again, we've had this question where we might have someone that has an AML CTF program, but they haven't KYC'd them for this because it might not fit in to a designated service for that relevant party. Okay, so in that instance, and it doesn't matter which form I go into, then there will be additional things that appear within this order form. Now, the critical thing here is if I don't have that Reliance agreement, as I said before, you won't see this area. Okay, it won't exist. And what will show up, however, is that when we go down into these forms and we look at the information around the office holders, what you will see in here is that any of these office holders will be required to enter mandatorily their email address. Why is that the case? It's because we will need to send the KYC check using Verify Me. So they will get an email via Verify Me to complete that KYC obligation for our CDD purposes. Okay, so if you have 2 directors here, each of those directors is going to have to include their own email addresses so that that link can be sent to them. And the order in the company will not be submitted to ASIC until those KYC checks have been done. Okay, so that is unique to all of the other documents. All of our other documents, we will generate them, but we will put it on hold until such a time that the KYC has been checked. But because the company and corporation will go to and be posted to ASIC for that registration, the preparation of this won't move through to submission to ASIC until the relevant parties have had their KYC checks ultimately done. Okay, so just a little bit of a difference there. And ultimately what happens again, so if we go no there, you can see as we move over into the trustee and member details, if we go down here, you'll see again the consistent approach, member 1, and then the other members would need to go through the particulars of that as well. Okay, so that is the key difference that you see on these 2 forms regarding whether we have an obligation under KYC to check those individuals and verify them for our own obligations, or if you have that Reliance agreement in place, as long as you disclose that information that we need and timestamp that in essence, we will allow for that order to continue and then ultimately be done. Okay, so that's the critical change or additions that have been done to the platform. Now, what happens when you submit that order, you can see here. So we then, in essence, have this order being on hold. Okay, and the next couple of slides here, I've just left in here to help you to understand what this looks like. And the fact that there is a new section that we've added on the platform that allows you to check and see what ones have been done and what ones haven't been done. If you're doing multiple company orders and new funds and that stuff a day, you won't necessarily keep tabs with what's going on and or wondering why something hasn't occurred. You can now go in and check the statuses of this information. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my completed orders. And you'll notice in here, just above the completed orders, we've got a new order KYC status. Okay, and I'll come to that in a second. So this difference here now that you can see is these orders that I've got here. So this one I've done for the webinar it is currently on hold. So I've put in the relevant information, single director, that's me. We can see the current status is that I've been invited to complete that, but it is not yet complete, or it has not yet been verified, more importantly. So the status would move to verified. So if for some reason the client, I didn't get it, I deleted it, I don't know, you can re-invite them through here. And we've deliberately left this being customizable because in some instances, what we might find is the email address was wrong, or they send it to a different email address, send it to my work one, send it to my private one. So you'll be able to go in and make that change and then resend that invite there. So whilst you have a visual here to see what ones are on hold, what we've also done is over here is we've built a dashboard that allows you to go and have a look in here as to the individuals and when that order went through and what time and so forth. And again, you can go through and do that invitational re-invite through this process as well. So it gives you a visual. We might try and put a little bit more information on here, even table or chart out here for you, those that have been verified, maybe those that are or filtered by those that are still invited and outstanding. So again, once we start to get some user feedback on what this looks like, we can build out more in here to make this a more valuable tool for you. But getting this operational, first and foremost, is quite clearly the most important part here. So yes, so we've got our completed status that is using that traffic light system that we spoke about. Once that process has been done, this is all done by what are called webhooks. So the webhook sends it off for the verifications to occur. Once those verifications have been completed, webhook comes back, tells us that it's been completed, and this status here of on hold will ultimately move to what you can see here as our standard action, and it will allow you to download those documents. So for a company, once that status has been done, it will then post that, that registration using our API to ASIC to allow for that order to be registered with ASIC, and then the incorporation docs will follow shortly after that. So there will be a timing delay slightly with the company incorporation versus the other documents, as I said before. So let's keep moving. So hopefully this is all making sense, and you can see why it's taken such a long time to get to where we are with this. But what we then have is, after receiving the email to start the verification process, there are a multiple of steps that then need to occur. So the user experience, I might just go back here and just into my email. So you can see here we have a submitted order. So you can see that that was the submitted order that went through around the one that was on there. We've also set up an email that explains the next steps of this process. Now, we need to give it a bit of formatting, but conceptually what you can see under here is that your order is on hold. We can't lodge with ASIC or release documents until the identity checks have been done. The details of that particular order are included in there, why this is required, linking to our help guides here that you can see to understand some of these elements further, who we've invited. So all the individuals who you are required to add an email address to have been sent a secure Verify Me invitation. And again, you can go to the KYC check status page, which is what we were talking about here before, to see what's going on. And they're going to get a Verify Me branded email as Smarter SMSF, and they need to go through what the checks look like, what happens next, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so you get some information around that. So this is then what the email looks like. Okay, so get started with your verification. So there is an obligation here to set up your wallet. So in essence, start that verification process. It is a two-step process to log in. So there's verification, then there will be a verification email to do that. And then once you log in, there will be, of course, a requirement to set up your wallet. Okay, so what that then looks like is in those steps that I was talking to you about before. So this is all about, activating your wallet. So that's the verify link that follows. And then once you've completed that, you'll get a thanks for submitting your information and go from there. But what those steps ultimately look like when we come back to this screen is we have the setting up your identity within Verify Me. It has a requirement to add the verification document, so either a passport or a driver's license. We do a biometric real-time face check, and then we agree to the terms and conditions as part of that process. Now, for probably 95%, 99% of all orders, we're simply going to be looking at this as confirming the verification as an individual. The only time beyond that where we're transacting on behalf of a business, trust, or entity is really going to be in the context of the KYB checks that we need to set up for Reliance, or in some instances where beneficiaries of certain trusts might be entities in their own right. Okay, so, but again, they are very few and far between on our own platform. So once those 4 steps have been done, it will allow you to submit that application, and then you will see that information has been submitted successfully, and we can, in essence, move on. So once those checks have been completed, there is a redirection that goes to this static page where ultimately we want to tell the user what stage they are now at as part of this ordering process. Okay, so the order was submitted by the advisor. Okay, you've now completed your identity verifications, and we're now at the point where we have told the advisor again that has prepared that order that this is now ready to complete. So it will allow for the delivery of the documents to the advisor, and then expect to be contacted by them for those documents that are being prepared to be executed by them, and you'll have your meeting or you'll do whatever is going to happen as part of that next process. Okay, so as document preparer, the order status is updated to completed, as we said before, and as is ordinarily the case, we will then email the document and the status on the completed orders page will be updated as well. Okay, so that is in essence what the process looks like. As I said before, we have this new AML CTF laws section on our knowledge base here that you can see. So there's a number of these. So if you're wanting to look at applying for that Reliance membership, you can go in here and follow step 1 and step 2 and step 3 and so forth. If you want to understand whether it affects me, what documents, all those sorts of things, you can do that there. Also on our Smarter SMSF page, we also have our own designated page, or page devoted, I should probably say, to how this all works and what some of those considerations are, what documents included, the decision that you need to make around these, and the benefits of those for you, and then ultimately what needs to happen if you're an existing member or new to Smarter SMSF, and a number of FAQs that sit on there as well. So I would suggest for many of you that are looking at this, exploring this, get yourself up to speed with what would be relevant. Hopefully today has provided you some insight and helped answer some questions around some of these particular issues, and so that you can really step forward with this in your own right. Because as you can see, probably from the discussions that I've been having here today, there's an enormous amount of work that's been going on, and I'm sure you've been seeing many of the other providers in the marketplace in SMSF software and also within the document space as well, really sort of foot to the floor trying to get a lot of this information done. So we will be rolling out the first of these forms, our company incorporations, next Monday. Okay, so that form that I showed you before around the actual company incorporation in here, wherever it's gone, that will be those documents will basically become live, and will be people that are ordering will be subject to the requirements that are under our own AML CTF program. So it will need to ensure that those that are ordering either will need to meet the obligations that we have for our own AML CTF purposes, or look to get the Reliance agreement in place as soon as possible or as soon as practicable, so that we can look to apply the membership tags to the relevant parties, and they'll be able to utilize that under this, I guess, reduced framework that exists where Reliance is in play. The other thing, and I did touch on this a little earlier, is that and what I should say before that is we'll then be just letting people know that we then will be rolling those out shortly after so new SMSFs will come out pretty quickly after that. Then it'll be LRBAs, change of trustees, et cetera, et cetera. So most of the framework has been done, as I've showed you today. So that's the heavy lifting. Building it into the forms is a relatively straightforward thing for us now. So there will be, I would expect by the end of August, all these documents will be fully embedded with the ongoing AML CTF requirements now that the verification process, Reliance agreements and stuff are done. I did speak earlier about the new user permission here. So one of those in our new admin console is the ability to disable form submission. So if you have administrative staff, you might have offshore staff or others who have been ordinarily ordering these documents as designated services. There might be applications that sort of fly through the business or through an online form or something, and then that information would just get processed. We did see an example through a conversation with clients last week where they said, well, these applications came in and then they just got processed. And when the questions were asked of superiors above them, well, have all the AML checks been done? And they're like, no. This flagged this potential issue where they want to restrict any ability to be able to submit forms. So what this will do is we'll ensure that those individuals can only save orders, and then you can use the saved orders workflow that we have within our admin console to be able to send that through to the relevant parties. So just quickly on that, what we do have as part of our subscriptions, and this may be relevant for those that don't have a subscription and want to understand what that looks like. You do have the ability in here to review or look at saved orders of different team members. So if I just go to David here, the fact that he might have submitted that order, he can send that to me, but I can also go into here and then I can resume it and submit it myself. I can send to him the fact that it might need some rework to be done, and I can send him back comments on that. I can also say that it's ready to submit, and he could go through and potentially complete that order himself as well. So there are a number of things that we can do here around the saved orders. Equally, with the completed orders, we have the ability to, in here, look at assigning orders amongst different parties. So again, if something's been completed by one person, but it needs to go to someone else as part of a workflow or a next step, then there is an ability to be able to move that around. So I can transfer that document and I can provide that over to Tim, for example, and confirm that transfer to him. So it enables that workflow to operate, and most importantly, for those decisions that you might have internally, not only for AML, CTF purposes, but you may have it just for whatever your own workflow looks like as well. And all those ideas come from our members, which is the way that we see these improvements on our platform continue to be derived. So again, if you've got your own AML CTF program, think about this Reliance agreement. You can get in at any time here, log in and go to the admin console is the word I was after, and you can start that application for the Reliance agreement via that Reliance dashboard. And I guess if you don't have any AML CTF program, what will be important is if you are ordering these documents that you set the expectations with clients about the need for these customer due diligence obligations to be completed before the documents will be issued. So that education around what happens next, what to expect, the fact that they need to get that done, and then hopefully we've built all those tools in the system for you to check that they're being done and if you need to reissue and so on and so forth as well. So a couple of FAQs here. I guess these are some of the common things that we've seen so far. Again, things like, does my entire team need to go through the KYC checks? No, they don't. We will, once the relevant parties have undertaken that process, we will then simply apply the tags to those individuals, and then they are literally on their way in those revised forms. Who can access the Reliance dashboard? Well, that does relate to, in essence, the account holders of subscriptions. If others are looking, especially those in a PRYG user sense, are looking to undertake that, get in contact with us. We'll make sure that you've got access to that area so that you can then look at undertaking that application for Reliance and go through that. I'll put on the bottom there the ability to get in contact with David. David, will take you through how that looks and what information you might need to get and provide to us. So you can email him, you can book a time in his calendar, or give us a call. In terms of why Verify Me, again, we get asked that a little bit. It allows for us ultimately to try and automate a lot of the steps that we needed. So the webhooks that I spoke about before were really important to ensure that a document was on hold, but it could also be released so that it automates that process once those KYC checks and so forth have been done. I think in the future, once everything beds down, we will also look at how we can integrate with other platforms like BGL's Verify, for example, so that that information can pass through. That's one of the reasons why we did choose Verify Me as well, because that wallet can be utilized on multiple occasions. So if you've got a company order and then naturally the workflow is to create the new SMSF, you're not having to go through and do KYC checks on that same individual again and again and again. it will recognize that they have already done that. It will vouch for those based upon the wallet, and it will automatically release those documents as having been completed. So there are a number of reasons why we sort of put that in place. And yeah, we think that really stands out from some of the other providers that we had a look at. And I guess the final one there, if we completed KYC checks but don't have a Reliance agreement, do we need to do Smarter SMSF need to conduct those checks as well? The short answer is yes, we do. I did speak earlier about the fact that there is potential for per order reliance, but that is again going to need further work done around the order forms and the fact that you would need to be uploading details of your own AML CTF program. You would also need to upload all the verification checks, and then it would require us to actually go and look at that stuff. So the reality is there would be a fairly sizable increase in our fee to undertake that work, which really doesn't sit with us that well. So I think we would probably price it to the extent that it would make it quite unattractive. So our view at this point in time is to really not go down that particular path. But if you do have any other questions off the back of it, please feel free to get in contact with David or myself, and we'd be more than happy to sort of walk you through a little bit more of this shortly. So that is it for today. Hopefully that has given you some really good insight into the changes, some decisions that you might need to be making in your own business around this, and how you ultimately work with us, especially where you are ordering those designated service orders, such as trust and company formations and the like as well. We'll be continuing to build out the knowledge base around our AML CTF, around the order forms and that sort of stuff as well. So please feel free to ask as many questions as you can at the moment, and we'll be more than happy to help work through some of those with you as well. Got a number of sessions coming up there. Our next one is our LRBA Masterclass. So to our members, we will be sending something to you for registration in the next 24 hours. For those of you that want to attend that are not members, you can go to our events page to find out more and to register as well. So special thank you for you joining me today. We will get a copy of these slides sent to you as part of the follow-up from today's session. Have a great rest of the week. Bye for now.